What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. The fight gloves are on. UFC 159 takes place this Saturday night. Of course, headlined by the much anticipated UFC light heavyweight championship fight between Johnny Bones Jones and the American gangster, the people's champion, Chael P. Sonnen. We got a pretty big fight card to get through here. We're going to start with the 3 fights on the Facebook preliminary card. Let's get right into it. In the featherweight division, we have Steven Siler taking on Kurt Holobaugh to lead off the Facebook prelims. Steven Siler, 21-10 on his pro career, a 3-1 record in the UFC, was decisioned in his last fight by Darren Elkins. Now, he has been finished in 9 of his other 10 losses. So 9 of his 10 losses on his career have all been finishes. That's a pretty high rate for getting yourself finished. But 13 of his 21 professional wins have been by submission. He is 6-1 when the fight goes the distance. Siler's got a long reach and he loves clinch fighting. He really loves to get the fight in the clinch and keep control there. Not overly evasive for a featherweight. For somebody that's at this smaller weight class, he only has a 49% rate of avoiding strikes and only about a 45% takedown defense. So those numbers really only pedestrian. Kurt Holobaugh, 9-1 on his pro career, making his UFC debut. He lost his only Strikeforce outing, being decisioned by Pat Healy. 6 of his 9 pro wins have been submissions. His takedown defense and his overall ground game looked very poor against Pat Healy, but that's an easy thing to have happen. Pat Healy is a very good fighter. Holobaugh did manage to slightly outstrike Pat Healy in that fight, even though it was in a losing effort. I'm going to go with the experience edge here. Steven Siler has a major edge in overall fight experience and has the edge, of course, in UFC fight experience. So I'm going to take Steven Siler to beat Kurt Holobaugh, but I don't think he finishes him. I'm going to take Siler to beat Holobaugh by way of unanimous judges' decision. In the welterweight division, we have Nick Catone taking on Luther Head. Nick Catone, 9-4 on his pro career, a losing record of 3-4 in the octagon. He was submitted in his last fight by TJ Waldberger. Now, Catone has an exactly even win distribution throughout his career. He's got 3 knockouts, 3 submissions, and 3 decisions. He is a southpaw with a Div 1 wrestling pedigree and also has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt under Pablo Popovich. He has an 83% takedown defense, which is elite level, and he's a very active ground grappler. He likes to pass the guard. He likes to get into dominant positions. Luther Head, 9-3 on his pro career, so 1 fewer fight throughout his career, an even record of 2-2 in the UFC. He was TKO'd in his last fight by Mike Pyle. 7 of his 9 pro wins have been finishes. He's got 4 knockouts and 3 submissions, so he has power. He also has grappling credentials. Luther Head has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, but he definitely prefers stand-up striking. He prefers hand striking. He's a very good boxer, but he's also got very strong clinch striking as well. He also sports a 70% takedown defense. So in a fight that I think is definitely going to be contested on the feet, because I don't think either guy really has good enough takedowns to score consistent takedowns in the fight, I think it's going to be primarily on the feet. I give the striking edge, actually, surprisingly enough, I give it to Nick Catone. So I'm actually going to take Nick Catone to win this fight, to beat Luther Head by 2nd round knockout or TKO. Back down to the featherweight division, we have Leonard Garcia taking on Cody McKenzie. Now, Leonard Garcia is 15-10-1 on his pro career, an atrocious UFC record of 2-6. Garcia is riding a 4-fight losing streak, with losses to Max Holloway, Matt Grice, Nam Phan, and the Korean zombie Chang Sung-jung. 12 of his 15 pro wins have been finishes. He's got 3 knockouts and 9 submissions. So he is a finisher, but he's only 3-8 when the fight goes the distance. He's a striker with a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. However, he has no submission victories since 2007. I am not a very big fan of Leonard Garcia. I'm not a believer in the man's skill set. Cody McKenzie is 13-3 on his pro career. He is 2-3 in the UFC, being knocked out in his last fight by Chad Money Mendez. He has 11 victories in his career by the McKenzie team, but he has been finished in all 3 of his losses, being knocked out once and submitted twice. Cody McKenzie, to me, is the one-dimensional fighter. Like, there are one-dimensional fighters like Shinya Aoki is accused of being, and then there's the one-dimensional fighter where he literally has, like, one weapon. But that one weapon is pretty fucking good, and Leonard Garcia is a bag of dog shit. So I'm going to take Cody McKenzie to beat Leonard Garcia. Some people are calling that an upset. I don't particularly call it that, but I'll take McKenzie to submit Leonard Garcia by McKenzie teen in the second round. Moving on to the FX prelims now, we have Bryan Caraway taking on Johnny Bedford in the bantamweight division. Bryan Caraway, 17-6 on his pro career, a 2-1 record in the UFC, being decisioned in his last fight by Takeya Mitsugaki. Now, 14 of his 17 pro wins have been submissions, so he is a very good grappler. He is only 1-3 when the fight goes the distance, so half of his career losses come by way of decisions. He pushes for takedowns. He's hitting about 3 a fight. So he's hitting about 1 takedown a round, which is very good numbers for a guy in the bantamweight division where fighters can be hard to catch. Plus, he's got an 88% takedown defense. What this all equates to is the ability to dictate where a fight goes, and Bryan Caraway is very, very good at exploiting that advantage that he has over most fighters. Johnny Bedford is 19-9-1 on his pro career, 2-0 in the UFC, currently riding a 3-fight win streak, which includes a knockout over Marcos Vinicius and a TKO over Louis Gaudinot in the UFC. 15 of his 19 pro wins has been finishes. He has 7 knockouts and 8 submissions. So very well-rounded kind of guy, can finish the fight from anywhere. However, 8 of his 9 professional losses have been submissions. So that really plays right into Bryan Caraway's strength, which is his submission grappling. Bedford's got very strong ground and pound. He has never been taken down in the UFC, and in the UFC has a takedown accuracy of over 70%. So very, very good takedowns for Johnny Bedford. To be perfectly honest, this to me comes down to Bryan Caraway's ability to avoid takedowns, or if he is taken down, throw up submission attempts, and obviously Johnny Bedford has been susceptible to submissions in the past. Maybe I'm just on an underdog streak here, but I'm going to take Johnny Bedford. I got a feeling about Johnny Bedford. We'll put it that way. I'm actually going to take Johnny Bedford to win this fight. I think he beats Bryan Caraway by way of unanimous judges' decision. Sticking with the prelim cards, the 3rd ever women's fight in the UFC, taking place women's bantamweight division between Sara McMann and Sheila Gaff. Now, Sara McMann, an undefeated 6-0 on her professional career, obviously making her UFC debut. In the 2004 Summer Olympics, she was a silver medalist in 63-kilogram freestyle wrestling. So we know what her game is going to be. 3 of her 6 professional MMA wins have come by way of decision. She is a top 5 ranked bantamweight. But aside from her wrestling skills, she is known for having very dangerous head kicks that she likes to employ. So Sheila Gaff really going to have to watch out for the head kicks of Sara McMann. Sheila Gaff, 10-4-1 on her professional career, so a lot of experience for a female fighter, also making her UFC debut. All 10 of her professional wins has been finishes. She's got 6 knockouts and 4 submissions. She has been submitted in 2 of her 4 career losses. All 10 of her wins are first-round stoppages, and she fights with a proclaimed berserker style. She starts the fight, she gets in there, and she Chael Sonnen somebody. Like, her pace is relentless, and she throws and throws and throws until somebody falls over. So Sheila Gaff is a very dangerous fighter in that she's going to come out right out of the gate. There is no rest for the wicked, and she's going to come out and she's going to try to take your head off right away. This to me is going to come down to whether or not Sheila Gaff is able to stuff the takedowns of Sara McMann, because if Sara McMann is smart, as soon as this fight starts, horn, she's going to go out and she's going to shoot a takedown, and she's going to keep shooting takedowns until she takes Sheila Gaff down. Now, What Sheila Gaff is going to have to do is counter those takedowns with knees and try to stuff the takedowns and everything like that. It's another underdog moment for me. I gotta take Sheila Gaff. I don't know why. I'm riding with the underdogs here, but I'm going to. I'm going to take Sheila Gaff to catch Sara McMann and TKO or knock her out inside of the very first round. From women's bantamweight, we're going to move all the way up to the light heavyweight division, where we have Gian Villante taking on OSP Ovince St. Preux. Now, Gian Villante is 10-3 on his pro career, obviously making his UFC debut. He was 3-2 in a stint in Strikeforce, currently riding a 3-fight win streak over Derek Memon, Trevor Smith, and Keith Barry in Strikeforce. 6 of his 10 professional wins have been knockouts. He's a former heavyweight and has a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's also a training partner of Chris Weidman. Ovince St. Preux, 12-5 on his pro career, making his UFC debut, had a very impressive 6-1 record in Strikeforce. OSP knocked out TJ Cook in his last fight. 9 of his 12 professional wins have been finishes. He's got 6 knockouts and 3 submissions. He is 3-4 when the fight goes the distance. OSP to me is a game plan fighter, but he's not necessarily boring. OSP is very, very good at fighting to his opponent's weaknesses. He's a lot like Michael Bisping in that matter. His fight IQ is very, very high, and he's very good at adapting to a situation and fighting to his opponent's weaknesses. I got nothing against Gian Villante. I like Gian Villante. I actually think he's a very good fighter. I'm going to ride with OSP in this fight, and I'm going to take Ovince St. Preux to beat Gian Villante by way of unanimous judges' decision. And the final fight of the preliminary card happens in the lightweight division, where we see Rustam Khabilov take on Yancy Medeiros. Rustam Khabilov endeared himself to fight fans all over the world with his "fuck it, I'll just German suplex you" fight style. His debut fight in the UFC was fantastic. I just wanted to throw that out there. Rustam Khabilov made me a huge fan. Rustam Khabilov is 15-1 on his professional career, 1-0 in the UFC, as I mentioned, currently riding a 4-fight win streak, including that knockout victory over Vince Pichel in the UFC. Obviously, as I mentioned, German suplexes for days. As a matter of fact, Rustam Khabilov owns a 28-second first-round knockout victory in M1 Global by way of German suplex. I just love the fact that he knocked somebody out with a German suplex. Khabilov, along with those suplexes, has vicious ground and pound. He's got great wrestling. He's got great takedowns. As far as I'm concerned, Rustam Khabilov is an underrated and dangerous fighter in the lightweight division. Yancy Medeiros, however, is undefeated. Yancy Medeiros, 9-0 on his pro career, making his UFC debut, winning both his Strikeforce fights. Medeiros knocked out Gareth Joseph in his last fight in Strikeforce. 6 of his 9 professional wins have been knockouts. This is his first fight, however, since June 2010. It is also his debut in the lightweight division, coming down from middleweight. Medeiros has a knack for hitting the Boss Rutan liver shot, and if you don't know what the Boss Rutan liver shot is, look it up. Boss Rutan was the king of liver shots. You all know where I'm going with this, right? Rustam Khabilov, German suplexes for days. I'm going to take Khabilov to beat Yancy Medeiros by way of second round knockout or TKO. That's going to take us on to the main card. We're going to start in the lightweight division, where we have Jim Miller taking on Pat Healy. Now, Jim Miller, 22-4 on his pro career, 11-3 in the UFC, so a lot of UFC experience and a very good record. He decisioned Joe Lozon in his last fight that I personally thought was one of the fights of the year last year. 12 of his 22 professional wins have been by submission. He is also 7-3 when the fight goes the distance. He has elite level grappling, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt combined with Division I wrestling pedigree. He also has very diverse striking, lots of takedowns, very active on the ground, loves to pass the guard and get into dominant positions. Jim Miller is a definite contender in the lightweight division. But Pat Healy's no slouch. Pat Healy, 29-16 on his pro career. He is 0-1 in the UFC, having a UFC fight all the way back in 2006. But he's currently riding a 6-fight win streak, including 2 straight decisions over Kurt Holobaugh and Mizuto Hirota. Now, 21 of his 29 professional wins have come by way of finish. He's got 6 knockouts and 15 submissions, but he has been finished in 10 of his 16 losses. He's also 8-6 when the fight goes the distance. I'm very high on Jim Miller. I was surprisingly impressed by what I saw in that Joe Lauzon fight. I thought that was Joe Lauzon's fight. But Jim Miller just put on a show in that fight. It's Pat Healy's first time in the UFC since 2006. So I'm going to give him a pass here because he's also against a high-level opponent. I'm going to go with Jim Miller here to win this fight by way of unanimous judges' decision. Up to the light heavyweights now, we have Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis, taking on Vinny Magalhaes. Phil Davis, 10-1-1 on his pro career, 6-1-1 in the UFC, submitting Wagner Prado in his last fight. 6 of his 10 professional wins have been finishes. He's got 2 knockouts and 4 submissions. Phil Davis's game is striking from anywhere, stand-up, clinch, on the ground. He's got very, very strong ground and pound. He works hard for dominant positions. He loves to pass guard, and he's actually quite evasive. He avoids 71% of incoming strikes against him. He also has a 73% takedown defense, so very good numbers there for Phil Davis. Vinny Magalhaes is 10-5-1 on his pro career, only 1-2 in the UFC, but he is currently riding a 6-finish win streak, including his submission victory over Igor Pokrajic in his return to the UFC. 10 of his 10 pro wins have been finishes. He's finished every single one, 2 knockouts and 8 submissions. However, he is 0-3 when the fight goes the distance on his career. He's a second-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Royler Gracie. He is also a black belt under Eddie Bravo at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. This is a fight where both guys are going into it claiming that they're going to submit the other guy. And I think if this is a fight that comes down to grapple, 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 and nothing but grapple, how can you go against a guy with a second-degree Gracie black belt and a black belt from 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu? I don't think you can. So I've got to go with Vinny Magalhaes here in a fight that I think is going to be a grapple fest, but I think it's going to be an exciting as hell grapple fest, and I just think Vinny Magalhaes is going to catch Phil Davis before vice versa. So I'm going to take Magalhaes to submit Phil Davis inside the second round. Up to the big boys now, heavyweights. We have Big Country Roy Nelson taking on Cheick Kongo. Roy Nelson is 18-7 on his pro career, a winning record of 5-3 in the octagon. He has 2 straight knockouts/technical knockouts over Matt Mitrione and Dave Herman in the UFC. 16 of his 18 professional wins have been finishes. He's got 11 knockouts, and he's got 5 submissions. He's only 2-6 when the fight goes the distance. Despite the fact that he's got 11 knockouts on his career, Roy Nelson is a Renzo Gracie black belt. But despite that black belt, his grappling numbers in the UFC are fairly unspectacular. He's only got a 23% takedown efficiency and only a 42% takedown defense. Luckily, in this fight, I don't particularly think he's going to have to worry about a ton of takedowns. Let's take a look at Cheick Kongo. 18-7-2 in his pro career, a very good record of 11-5-1 in the UFC. Decision Sean Jordan in his last fight. Now, 10 of his 18 pro wins have been by way of knockout, of course, former professional kickboxer. He's 5-4 when the fight goes the distance. He is a dynamic, all-around striker, and Kongo, strangely enough, actually has a very slightly higher volume of clinch strikes landed in the UFC versus stand-up strikes, which you don't see it very often. He also has a 63% takedown efficiency, so if he does want to take the fight to the ground, chances are 63% versus 42%, he's probably going to be able to land a takedown if he attempts at least 2. For whatever reason, I just feel like this is going to be a slugfest. I just think these two guys are going to go in there. It's going to be just swing for the fences right from the first bell. And in what I think is going to be one of the better stand-up fights we've seen in a long time in the UFC, I'm going to take Roy Nelson to finally land that one big one in the third round that's going to put Cheick Kongo down. I'll take Roy Nelson to beat Cheick Kongo by way of third round knockout or TKO. Co-main event time, and it's a good one. Middleweight division, we have Michael the Count Bisping taking on Alan the Talent Belcher. Michael Bisping, 23-5 in his professional career, 13-5 in the UFC, so all but 10 of his professional fights taking place inside the octagon. He was TKO'd in his last fight by Vitor Belfort. Now, 18 of his 23 wins have been finishes. He's got 14 knockouts and 4 submissions. So definitely more of a stand-up fighter, but Bisping owns multiple jiu-jitsu English championships. Take that for what it is. He's 5-3 when the fight goes the distance as well. Bisping's very evasive in the striking game. He avoids around 70% of incoming strikes. He's got decent takedown defense, around 63%. The big thing about Bisping is all of his losses come against high-level competition. You look at his losses. The loss to Vitor, Dan Henderson, Wanderlei Silva. So Bisping consistently has had a little bit of trouble stepping to higher-level competition. Some people may not consider Alan Belcher high-level competition. This guy does. Alan Belcher, 18-7 on his pro career, a winning record of 9-5 in the UFC. Was decisioned in his last fight by Yushin Thunder Okami. 16 of his 18 pro wins have been finishes, 9 knockouts, 7 submissions, which means he can get it done from anywhere. He's only 2-4, though, when the fight goes the distance. Alan Belcher holds a black belt for almost every joint on his body. He holds 5 different black belts: Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Taekwondo, Duke Rufus kickboxing, Judo, and Hayastan. So he's got 5 different black belts. He's an extremely well-rounded fighter, and he's very well-conditioned. He can push a consistent pace for a full 3 rounds and a consistently high-level pace. And the dangerous thing about Alan Belcher, especially in the grappling game, Alan Belcher will throw submissions from anywhere. If you take him down, he'll throw subs off his back. He is not afraid to do that. He's displayed that in his last few fights. I still don't like Michael Bisping. I'm going to go Alan Belcher here. I think Alan Belcher wins this fight. Michael Bisping, it's not that Michael Bisping's not a good fighter. I think he's a tad overrated for the win quality that he has. I think the quality of his victories, the quality of the opponents that he's beaten is not as high as the praise he's given, but I still think he's a good fighter. I don't know, I got a feeling about Alan Belcher here, so I'm going to take Alan Belcher to beat Michael Bisping by way of second round submission. Main event time, we've all been waiting for it, now it's here. Jon Bones Jones taking on the gangster of West Lynn, the American gangster, the people's champ, Chael P. Sonnen. The closest thing to a professional wrestler in the UFC since Brock Lesnar. But let's start with the champ. Jon Jones, 17-1 on his pro career. All but 6 of his professional fights taking place in the UFC, a UFC record of 11-1. Currently riding an 8-fight win streak over the elite of the elite at light heavyweight. Vitor Belfort, Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, Rampage Jackson, Shogun Rua. He's beaten them all. 14 of his 17 pro wins have been finishes. He's got 8 knockouts and 6 submissions. Jon Jones is an extremely well-rounded fighter. He's got vicious ground and pound. He's never been taken down in the UFC. You can't say enough about this guy, even though he maybe, probably, possibly tapped out to Vitor's armbar. But enough about the past, let's talk about the future. Chael P. Sonnen. Chael Sonnen, 27-12-1, 6-5 in the UFC, was TKO'd in his last fight by Anderson Silva. He launders money, he's got elevated testosterone, and this is his second straight title fight. He is 16-1 when the fight goes the distance. But 8 of his 12 professional losses have been by submission. Chael Sonnen, you know what you're getting from him. Wrestle, wrestle, wrestle. It's high-pressure grappling. It's takedowns, guard passing, ground and pound, repeat. Chael P. Sonnen is going to bring the pain. But Jon Jones is going to win the fight. I'm going to take Jon Jones here. I got no reason not to take Jon Jones. Jon Jones could very well prove to be one of the great generational talents in mixed martial arts. So I got to go with Jon Jones. But you know what? I've completely turned around on Chael Sonnen. And I'm just going to say this in this video right here. I've completely turned around on Chael Sonnen. I really used to dislike him, but I can't dislike the dude anymore. I've totally turned around on Chael Sonnen. I'm on the People's Champs bandwagon, so I'm going to be pulling for Chael Sonnen for probably upset of the century here, because I think he deserves a UFC championship just because he's a funny guy. I think he deserves the title just for that reason. But I'm going to take Jon Jones to beat Chael Sonnen by unanimous judges' decision. There's your predictions, folks. Let's go over them here one more time. Facebook prelims, featherweight division. I've got Steven Siler beating Kurt Holobaugh by unanimous judges' decision. Welterweight division, I have Nick Catone beating Luther Head by second round knockout or TKO. And featherweight division, I have Cody McKenzie teening Leonard Garcia into retirement in the second round. Moving to the FX prelims, I've got Johnny Bedford decisioning Bryan Caraway in the bantamweight division. Women's bantamweight division, I have Sheila Gaff upsetting Sara McMann by first round knockout or TKO. Light heavyweight division, I have OSP Ovince St. Preux to decision Gian Villante. And the main event of the prelim card, lightweight division, I have Rustam Khabilov, the king of German suplexes, beating Yancy by second round knockout or TKO. Main card, lightweight division, I've got Jim Miller beating Pat Healy by unanimous judges' decision. Light heavyweight division, I have Vinny Magalhaes submitting Phil Davis in the second round. Heavyweight division, I've got Big Country bringing the thunder to Cheick Kongo, knocking him out or TKOing him in the third round. Middleweight co-main event, I've got Belcher upsetting Michael Bisping by second round submission. And the main event of the evening, I've got Johnny Bones, JBJ, retaining the light heavyweight championship, beating Chael Sonnen by way of unanimous judges' decision. Ladies and gentlemen, those are my fight picks. Want to hear your predictions in the comment section below. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, UFC 159. Enjoy the fights.